In the midst of one of Beijing's most recognizable landmarks stands one of the most important buildings in Chinese history. Who ordered the destruction of the previous hall? And why was he intent on changing these traditions? Rumors and speculations run rampant. Discover China uncovers the rivalry between tradition and the throne. In 1540 AD, Emperor Jiajing of the Ming Dynasty ordered the square-roofed Hall of Supreme Sacrifice in the Temple of Heaven destroyed. In its stead, another hall was to be erected, which the emperor dubbed the Hall of Supreme Happiness. Heated discussions followed this imperial decree. After all, this was not a mere hall, but a symbol of the Ming Dynasty's traditions. Situated in a southern suburb of Beijing, the Temple of Heaven covers an area of 273 hectares. It used to be the focal point of imperial sacrifices to heaven and earth. It carried with it a solemn, stately air. In ancient China, offering sacrifices to heaven and earth was an important ceremony. No match to the forces of nature, people would show their faith. They would bow to the land and sky, praying for good harvest and the blessings from the gods. According to historic records, this sacrificial ceremony began during the Xia dynasty, when China was still a subservient society. The Hall of Supreme Sacrifice was the main hall in the Temple of Heaven. It was built in 1420 AD, square-shaped with golden tiles and jade walls. It was a magnificent building. Each spring, the emperor would hold a ceremony, offering animals and crops as sacrifices, praying for good autumn crops. During ceremonies held within this significant hall, the emperor assumed the role of a messenger to the gods. Why did Emperor Jiajing order this important building demolished? In 1521 AD, 14-year-old Jiajing ascended to the throne. No one suspected one of his imperial decrees was to reconstruct the square-shaped Hall of Supreme Sacrifice, the scene of his coronation. His ministers were curious about his dissatisfaction with the hall and questioned his motives. According to historic records, there was no evidence that the building was not soundly built. In fact, construction of the hall's square-shaped roof was exceedingly more practical, saving time and money. Little is known about the Hall of Supreme Sacrifices other than scant information found in ancient books. The Hall of Happiness, constructed at the same period, reflects much of the same architecture. In terms of importance, the Hall of Supreme Sacrifice was a hall for the common people rather than a hall for the gods. It was graceful and striking. Therefore, it was unlikely Emperor Jia Jing had it reconstructed out of concern for safety or aesthetics. Why did Emperor Jia Jing prefer a round building? Did he disagree with the former emperors in architectural concepts? Emperor Jia Jing's reign was not typified by great artistic achievements, nor were there any major architectural accomplishments during his time. His courtiers believed his rumblings about this temple were more concerning his personal motives and not so much about architectural concerns or spiritual matters. In those days, traditional values were much more important than personal preferences, even for the emperor. Seen from a modern architectural standpoint, it can be inferred that Emperor Jia Jing reinforced his belief in round sky, square earth, seen in his design of the hall's round roof. Round sky, square earth was a commonly held belief in ancient China. How was this belief formulated? The ancient Chinese called the universe Tian, meaning heaven. They observe the sun forever rises in the east and sets in the west. Tian was therefore a closed sphere. They believed the gods in heaven created the sun, the moon, and the stars, sharing the same orbit. China of those times was surrounded by mountains and waters, leading the ancient Chinese to believe that the earth was square. With this perception in mind, round sky, square earth came to be. This was not simply their view of the universe, but a concept of daily life. This view took on many shapes. For instance, ancient Chinese coins were circular with a square hole in the middle. They retained this style from the Qin dynasty up to China's early modern times. Ancient Chinese structures are the best examples of this concept. Courtyard houses are traditional Beijing residences. 4 houses were built in 4 directions, signifying the square earth concept. The courtyard in the middle is round, signifying the round sky. In southern China, pillars were often circular, and their bases were always square. Many courtyards had round pools and square-shaped courts. Others preferred having a round gate connecting 2 courtyards. In the Temple of Heaven, the round sky, square earth motif is manifest. 2 walls surround the circular earthly mound. The outer wall is square, and the inner wall is round. The Forbidden City, Chinese architecture's proudest achievement, is also filled with these design elements. Pavilions within the palace have a round roof with a square base. This concept, as revealed in traditional Chinese architecture, reflects the spirit of the ancient Chinese idiom, man and heaven united. Heaven worshipping was a common practice in those days and was widespread beyond China. Is it possible that Emperor Jiajing relied on the round sky, square earth principle in designing the new hall? Or was there another particular reason? Accompanied by disagreement, the reconstruction was underway. However, rumors and suspicion began to spread. Emperor Jiajing's ministers did not only voice their dissatisfaction with the new design, but also with Emperor Jiajing. His authority was increasingly tenuous. Since Emperor Jiajing was not the son of an emperor, many felt this disqualified him from the throne. According to the Ming Dynasty history books, Emperor Mingwu had no son. He named Jiajing, then known as Zhuhou Cong, the son of a noble family, to be his successor. Jiajing called Emperor Mingwu father, as his real father was forbidden from ever entering the imperial court. Though he eventually became emperor, Jiajing felt he was being looked down upon because of his lack of imperial bloodlines. Worse still, as an unknown emperor, he knew that both his ministers and people did not respect him entirely. He knew he had to tread carefully. One step in the wrong direction could cost him the throne or even his life. Ancient Chinese traditionally worshipped heaven and earth. Emperors were the self-proclaimed sons of heaven. When an emperor ascended the throne, a ceremony was held where the new emperor reported his anointment to heaven and earth. By offering sacrifice, the emperor was ordained by heaven. Due to his circumstance, Emperor Jiajing placed much importance on this ceremony. He sought to be accepted by the court and the entire country. The ceremony was held to obtain the affirmation of the gods. From then on, it became forbidden to perpetuate any rumors about Jiajing's background. The round roof was a step in the right direction, as it fit the round sky, square earth credo. Many scholars pondered over a different question. Why did Emperor Jiajing take 19 years to finally decide to change the roof of the hall? According to one possible explanation, even though Jiajing ascended to the throne, his powers were still quite limited. Had he exposed his true intentions then and there, his ministers would revolt. He had to carefully plan his steps. In 1530 AD, Jiajing ordered a sacrificial altar to be built, called the Earthly Mound, south of the Hall of Supreme Sacrifice. The name for the altar honored the early Zhou dynasty. Emperor Jiajing began using tradition to gain the support of his ministers. He then built another hall, colorfully decorated with dragons and phoenixes. This hall was a fine example of how emperors use buildings to demonstrate their authority. It was called the Imperial Vault of Heaven. Outside the hall, the Echo Wall and the Triple Echo Stones path were built, utilizing ingenious designs to reverberate one's voice. These structures were believed to help the emperors clearly convey their words to heaven. When the emperor held a ceremony and read his words aloud, worshiping the gods, millions of people prayed with him. The emperor would then climb the earthly mound, reporting his achievements, failures, and the state of the nation to heaven. He prayed the gods would accept his sacrifices and bless the country with peace, prosperity, and good harvests. It was a commonly held belief that the gods in heaven are almighty, and that the emperor holding the ceremony was the Son of Heaven, the sacred messenger of heaven to the earth. After revamping the Temple of Heaven, Emperor Jiajing's authority was finally established. However, he could not get the square-roofed hall and the rumors that had been spreading for 19 years out of his mind. He was determined to make the change. He wanted to show his people that he truly was the Son of Heaven. Finally, in 1540 AD, the decision was made. The Hall of Supreme Joy became today's famous Hall of Prayers for Good Harvest. Additionally, Emperor Jiajing established a code of ceremony and made the sacrificial ritual an annual event. In these solemn and sacred ceremonies, his ministers and the Chinese people gradually came to recognize him as the rightful emperor. Jiajing's reign over China lasted for 45 years. Jiajing successfully achieved his objective through these ambitious ceremonies and projects. Round sky, square earth was an important tenet of Chinese culture. Originating from the ancient Chinese perception of the universe, nowhere was this credo more evident than in the Temple of Heaven. Emperor Jiajing's full intent may never be revealed. His battles against tradition for the throne are now tales of the past. As the new hall proudly stands amidst the Temple of Heaven, its ceremonies now faded, it will forever remain a precious landmark in Chinese history.